Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sonic Sunday number 10. I can't believe we're already up to 10 here. Today, I want to talk about the interesting topics of judgment and discernment and what the difference is between the two, and compassion, which can ultimately lead to grace, which is one of my favorite places to go. So, thank you for tuning in and being with me here on Sunday morning. Part of what stimulated me to do this one on judgment was I had taken an action that not just one, but several people kind of had a response to and a judgment of, and were seeing me through a darkened lens because of their judgment. And fortunately, both of them reached out to me and asked me clarifying questions. Clarifying questions. And this is a really important concept because we're all guilty, all of us, of looking at people or situations or circumstances and making judgments about them. And those judgments might not be right. They might not be based in any kind of reality, or they might be, through the lens of our own experience, right? We see everything through our own biofield. This is the sort of concept of projection, that if we've got obscurations in our own biofield, that's like a cloud passing over a lens, and we're going to see things cloudy and think that we're right, and we may even have a big emotional response to it, and it might lead to a kerfluffle. And what I found is that very often when we make judgments, that there's a number of things that happen. One, it it creates a kind of in our field. It creates a sort of lock and limitation, right? So the moment we put anybody else in judgment, we're also putting ourselves into that dynamic, especially if we're having difficult feelings from that judgment, right? And it's really easy, and we've all done this, to think that something is one way, or to think that somebody is one way, only to find out later that we were wrong, that we were wrong. And this is something that I think we do first and foremost to ourselves. We we judge ourselves, right? That's that inner critic, that inner judge that wants to give us a hard time. I've talked about this a lot because it's a very debilitating construct. And and so I want to talk about how we move past that, right? Because as long as you're judging yourself and judging others and you're all judgy, that's just not a comfortable place to be. Right? It's not good to be always judging yourself. It puts you in a freeze and contraction. We talk about how we want to expand, right, into our potential. And judgment is something that limits us, that locks us. But it's also something that's very hard to stop doing. It comes very automatically. It comes very naturally. And so I just want to lead us through some steps and then a tuning, to help navigate, to help set up the pathways to being more free of judgment. Um, so I want to also talk about the difference between judgment and discernment. All right. There's a difference here, and it's a really important difference because discernment is really a quality that comes more from the center of our being. Judgment's kind of like, it's like, it's off on the sides, and it's a lock. But discernment is more centered, it's more flowing, and it's basically the ability to evaluate, uh, you know, do I want this dessert or that dessert, or do I even want dessert? Um, but I guess what I use that metaphor is because is something good for you? Right? Is being exposed to this person or this event or this food or whatever, right? Is this going to be healthy? Is this going to be good for you? And when we might be with an unhealthy character and we don't necessarily need to judge them, but we can discern that it's probably better off for our organism to move away from something that might be unhealthy, right? So discernment is kind, it's open-minded, it is rational, and it's appropriate. So you might want to start reframing, when you're feeling judgy about something and you're kind of like getting fussy. Can you just step into a cooler, more centered, more logical place of discernment, right? So that's one thing. But then the other piece that I found so helpful, and it's so simple, is to have the judgment, right? Because you're gonna, like, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about someone else. A lot of our judgments, quite frankly, are programmed into us by the culture. So, hate Donald Trump. Oh, okay, I hate Donald Trump. Like, we're programmed. And so this is really important when you find yourself being judgy. It's like, well, where did this even come from? Like, why am I feeling that way? How might I have been programmed to respond to that in a particular way, right? I've told this story before. I might have even told it last week, but it's coming to mind again, where years ago, when my kids were little, 10 years ago, I was writing Tuning the Human Biofield, and I had a car full of teenage boys. And I said to them, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say energy medicine? And one of them, 13-year-old, he said, taboo. Taboo. Right? That's a judgment. And where did that even come from? Where did a 13-year-old boy get it in his head that energy medicine was taboo? Right? So there we have all kinds of subconscious programs running that have been put in us by TV, by media, by the internet, right? We programmed. And this is something that I think, in order to be a free and healthy human, you've got to recognize where these programs are. You've got to use discernment about your own responses and question your own first response, right? Just because you have a first response doesn't always mean that that's valid or best. And it's coming from some surface thing, and it's okay to kind of be like, let me go a little deeper here. Let me go into something that's more authentic. So when you find yourself casting judgment, again, on yourself or another, you don't want to be like, oh, that's bad of me, I'm making judgment. You want to judge your judgment, because then you're just compounding it. You want to take a moment to see if you can have that experience and then step past it. Take like one more step into compassion. Into compassion. Right? So you take the step into judgment, and you're like, there it is. And then, can I take one more step forward and soften and go into a compassionate response? And this can be very hard. I mean, sometimes it's like hardest with our mate, or hardest with our kids, or hardest with ourselves. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, like, why am I unwilling to extend compassion? And what's that program running? Right? Where am I insisting on holding myself in the rigidity of judgment? There's something going on there. And then when we can really step into compassion, and where I experience compassion physically, like in the Biofield anatomy, is in the solar plexus and heart. So it's kind of like right in here. It's a compassion kind of blooms. It sort of opens like a flower, like a peony. Right? And in that blooming and that opening and that multi-petaled acceptance, the energy comes up to the heart and opens, right? And this is good for your body. This is healthy. This centering, opening, blooming, lifting, loving is a much more coherent state than judgment. And if we really keep working at this, right? Because it's an effort. The first impulse might not be compassion, right? It might be judgy, 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 judgy. You might have to kind of work to soften and to settle and to come into compassion, because God is always compassionate. There's no, when you get in touch with the energy of God, when you can really feel that light, that illumination in your being, you know that that feeling of God, so patient, so loving, so compassionate, so non-judgy. God doesn't judge us. We judge ourselves. God doesn't need to judge us because we judge ourselves plenty. God just waits for us to come to that soft centered place. Right? And so the more that we can bring ourselves into that, uh, the more of a illuminated, uh, grateful, coherent, regulated experience we can have as humans. And I know that I'm an idealist. Um, let me just take a moment to look at your comments. So, how does this meld with trust yourself? I only have a little compassion for the self. Somewhere along the way, my judgment has been misconstrued. It feels almost ancestral. Well, yeah, it is ancestral, guys. I mean, you have to understand that anything that we experience, and especially anything that we struggle with, has come down the line through generations. So much guilt and judgment, and so much nonsense, really, in the programming and the stream of humanity. And it's embedded in our culture, right? And we've been so programmed to be judgmental of people. We've been programmed to take sides. So I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm this, I'm that. And we slap labels on ourselves and then we judge people who are on the other side. That's all programming. That's all divide and conquer to stop us from realizing that these people that you think you're judging, if you went and had a beer with them and you didn't know anything about labels, probably end up having a good time. So the way that we get divided really is through judgment and being programmed to judge each other. And it shows up on the internet, certainly in very snarky ways, right? Well, it's not healthy. And I think the very best place to start, really, because it's all a reflection of our own self-judgment. If we're in self-judgy mode, we're going to be judging others. If we're in self-compassion mode and understanding and kindness and patience, then that's what we're going to extend to other people. So anybody that's out there being like "Bah," about other people, you know that like that discomfort's going through them first. They're having that experience of self. Um, I'm in the humanity, such a weird competition embedded. Judgment can be a replacement for imagining something better. What a lovely comment that is. That's a really beautiful thing. I'm not I'm not a fan of thinking positively. A lot of the new age platitudes that we have had handed to us are actually dehumanizing. And people have been programmed to think that they need to be like Jesus Christ or Buddha. And I think that's really silly. You're supposed to be human. You're having a human experience at a challenging time. And when you have those expectations on yourself to like behaving like a saint or other people and whatever, it's messy here. It's a messy mess. And a lot of the reason why it's a messy mess is because we've had at least 5 generations of trauma in every generation. And what people are struggling with, a lot of the bad behavior that comes out of people is subconscious ancestral miasms. It's garbage in, garbage out. We're all guilty of that. That's why I'm doing this Shift Network class that starts in 2 days, actually, on ancestral healing. So we can really get into the noise and the signal and all of that garbage that we've inherited and that we get kind of tunneled into, right? And so my intention with that particular class is to like kind of smash out all of that programming so that your soul has more room to expand into your potential. And a really, really, really key part of this is self-compassion. I've been trying to replace judgment with curiosity. Yes, that is exactly it. And that is that asking clarifying questions, right? It's so easy to get into judgment and victimhood and stories and drama and blah 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 and all firing up your nervous system with upset. But if you took the time and had the self-worth and the diplomatic communication skills to be like, hey, this particular situation, the way it landed on me was kind of upsetting to me. And I just want to make sure I have all the information. So, can you share with me what your side of this is so I understand better? Because maybe I'm misunderstanding or maybe I'm missing something. And then you can avoid a kerfluffle and you can gain understanding. And then you can very often deepen a relationship when you're willing to be curious and to care instead of just go into whatever your story and nervous system pattern reaction is. Usually some kind of victimhood and upset. And that's ancestral. Like all of this lack of problem solving has really come down the line from us. I certainly know so many of the things that I've struggled with have just been like in my programming, in my patterning. I'm currently working through judgment and compassion with my parents. Currently, my dad at age 91 talks so negatively of himself, it makes me so sad. Yeah, right. Remember, guys, that we're drops of God, God and Goddess, right? We're the light, the beautiful, immutable, permanent, amazing, love filled light. And we're also the earth. We're water, we're soil, we're mycelia, we're bacteria. We're a miracle. Life is a miracle. Every moment is wondrous and miraculous if we can be free to get there. But if we've got layers of judgment on top of us, we're not getting anywhere. So I wanted to come back to this idea of being positive, right? I think that you need to take that concept of like trying to be positive and replace it with being constructive. Like, how can I respond to this situation, to this person, to this difficult moment? Can I kind of step back and instead of being with my knee jerk, whatever, ego nonsense, can I just contemplate for a moment, maybe from a compassionate place, how I can respond constructively to this so that it's moving in the direction of solving a problem, getting to a resolution, getting to a good feeling? It's so much more useful to be constructive. That's syntropy in action, creating order. And there's enough chaos and disorder in the world. We need you to be an agent of syntropy, of constructivity, not necessarily positivity. And sometimes, if we're being constructive, maybe we need to be a little tough lovey in a kind way. Yeah. And then this takes practice, right? It takes self-awareness and it takes practice. And this is a big part of deprogramming and depatterning this ancestral stuff is to realize that maybe that first impulse that arises, that's energy moving along established pathways. And it wants to go there because that's the habit. And this is where what it means to be conscious, right? Is to be able to look at what's happening and go, and maybe ideally, and this is what tuning helps with, to realize that you as a sub-creator of God actually have the ability to recreate your experience, to be more functional, to be more functional, to be more constructive. But you have to have that moment of recognition, or like, here I go, judgy kerfluffily, myself or other, and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't want to go there. I want to kind of reel it in. I want to contemplate. I want to see if I can drop into my compassionate center, right? And even as I talk, even as I say that, I feel like all this like that's kind of in the way. So we're going to get to a tuning in just a couple minutes, and we're going to work on the things that get in the way of us moving from judgment to compassion. Whatever those feelings are that are in the way that make that journey into that soft centered place scary or difficult or just not a habit. But if we can really learn to do that, we might have moments where we can't, and that's okay. And you don't want to judge yourself for it, right? But then you start to have these moments where you can, and you're like, wow, I just Akita that whole situation and I feel better and this relationship is better. And I did that. And that feels really good. And the more you do it, like any skill, you get better and better at it. My heart just heaved and eyes moistened. Yeah, that's that emotion. I can even feel it with my voice. Like my body is the tuning fork, and when I'm with a group, I can feel your vibe, right? I can feel the collective and the bigger picture. And just in case you're watching the recording and I'm about to do the tuning, please don't think that because you aren't here while I'm doing the tuning that it doesn't count for you. That's like thinking that if you weren't there when a song was recorded, that music won't move you. People are always asking, well, like, how does it work? How does sound healing work? I'm like, does anybody ever ask, how is it that music moves me? Nobody ever asks that. They just accept that music moves them. This makes music and it moves you. And it moves you because also my mind is part of the equation, right? And I've been doing this for a long time. So I know how to combine my mind and my attention and my care about us uh, to the music of this. And it doesn't matter if it's recorded. When I listen in, I'm listening to everyone who will ever watch this. And you're part of the data set that's here. But being compassionate does not mean ignoring our own boundaries. Well, absolutely, right? I mean, that's compassion for self, first and foremost. And that's where discernment comes in. Discernment is the evaluation of your own boundaries, right? And so you can be discerning. I mean, I've talked to many people who's like, I don't talk to my parents anymore because I discerned that my interactions with them were not healthy for me. And I couldn't, and I can have compassion for them, but I don't necessarily need to put myself in the path of their acidic expressions because I just, and I've tried and I get nowhere. And so I'm just going to let them be. Right. And that isn't necessarily being judgy about their dumb stuff. It's being discerning that being around those people is exhausting, is just not good. Right. And compassion for self. This is really important because it's when we're compassionate for ourselves, when we love ourselves and we respect ourselves, that we naturally respect our own boundaries. And maybe I'll do a talk on boundaries because that can be an elusive topic if you've never had boundaries or you haven't learned boundaries. No, early on in my marriage, my husband and I were fighting all the time, and we went to see a counselor. And he listened to me and he listened to my husband and he looked at me and he said, I'm going to say one word to you. He said, and that's boundaries. And I was like, what are you even talking about? I didn't understand. It's taken a long time to really understand. But a boundary is simply minding your own membrane and your responsibility as a living organism to keep yourself healthy. To know when to move away from bad vibes and to know how to move towards good vibes. That's boundaries. And to be able to express to somebody who's crossing your boundaries what they're doing and how it's not okay. And how if they want to hang out with you, they have to be respectful and mindful of your boundaries, right? So that's not even necessarily judgment. That's discernment. It's communication. It's compassion for self. It's compassion for others. I'm not talking about like being forgiving to somebody and compassionate to somebody who's trespassing your boundaries over and over again and keeping yourself in that situation. That's dumb. Need to have intelligence here and worthiness of self-preservation. What's between you and radiant vitality and a nourishing connection with God is almost always self-worth programming nonsense. So anytime you hear any stories coming up in your head, I'm like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. Pew! That's just a BS program. It's not self. It's just nonsense. Yeah. Okay. Walt Thornhill passed away. Oh, yes, Walt Thornhill. For those of you who don't know Walt Thornhill, he's an architect of the electric universe theory and a wonderful man. And I actually got to spend time with him in Australia. Walt was really formative in my hypothesis and coming to understand plasma and electricity in the body. And he really took me under his wing, and he worked with me on my book, and a really great person. If nobody's ever heard of Wall, you might want to go search him out, check out some of his talks. So, by God, do you mean the creator of the universe? Yes. So, James, go back to Sonic Sunday #1 in order to understand what I mean when I say God. And I'm just going to talk about this really briefly. I grew up in an atheist home. I was educated in an atheist school system. I became interested in science and spirituality, but that led me into the New Age world. I think a lot of us went through that. And in that world, you don't say God, you say source or the universe, which are very disembodied terms. But when you say God, everybody say God with me, you feel it all the way down in your core. And I like that resonance, right? I'm a sound person. I'm very interested in how sounds and words affect me. And I am seeing more and more people like myself who are going back to the word God. And I know I'm not affiliated with any religion. You guys, anytime you put any kind of label on you, you're going into judgment, you're going into division. Why do you want to do that? Is there some kind of security in that? To me, the moment you slap any kind of label on yourself, you've put yourself into a limitation. Labels go on the ego firewall. They don't go on your expanded spirit, your drop of God that's connected to the light. So when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about that light, that love, that beauty, that illumination, that life force, the essential oneness, the creator and the created. You can't separate God's creation from God. It's all fluctuations moving through the ether. It's all light, information, and light. And the unified field that this is all taking place in is God. And God is a feeling. God is the feeling that we want to get to. God is the nourishment, the source of all being. I was just watching Dolores Cannon, and she was talking about how, if you guys are familiar with her, how she's regressed people. And where did everybody start? Well, they started with God in past lives, if you will. And she regressed all these people back to where they came from. They didn't come from this planet or that star system or whatever. They came from God. And when they go back into God, they're like, oh, God, it's just so beautiful here. There's so much love, and it's so illuminating, and it feels so good. Right? That's heaven. And this whole idea of creating heaven on earth is us bringing that feeling into ourselves and extending it in other people and seeing it in other people. I always look for the God in other people. I'm always looking at them, being like, I see the God in you. I see the light in you. I see the potential in you. I see the greatness in you. It's way better to look at people in that way, because then you bring it out in them. And we exist in the space between each other. Can you see the God in yourself? Can you see the light in yourself? Can you see the love in yourself? And when you start being able to see it in yourself, you start being able to see it in others. And then you're creating that in the world. And that's what we need more of. And I know that I'm an idealist, okay? I don't want to apologize for that. All right. I'm feeling as if I'm singing. You speak everything I wish I could. That's because I talk a lot. All you need to do is talk a lot, and then you get better and better at it. All right. I wanna start attuning now. So we're gonna listen in, and I grabbed the 144 first. So we're just gonna listen into judgment. The stuff I was really feeling that the stuff that's in the way of us stepping from that judgment into compassion, into that radiant expression. Okay, wait, let me just answer this question because this looks good. So, where is the boundary between being self centered constructively and going too far selfishly? Well, that's discernment. That what comes to my mind is riding a surfboard, even though I've never surfed. This idea that I call surfing the now. where you just, you feel it. And you operate from feedback, right? If you're going too far or too selfish, people are going to let you know. They're going to be like, ouch, you're kind of going over my boundaries now. We want to be really sensitive if people communicate that. We don't want to be a jerk, right? Who are the kind of people that overstep your boundaries even after you've defined them? They're jerks. They're lacking sensitivity. You should use your discernment to be like, this person is this organism, and the vibe they're giving off is unhealthy to me. Ergo, I need to move away, or I need to get better and stronger at communicating my boundaries. Right. And that's what I found has happened over the years, is that I've gotten better at recognizing, communicating lovingly. Right? Whenever we do this, we want to be really gentle and yin, soft, respectful. If you put out charge, you get back charge. That's it. So putting out charge almost never leads anywhere, because people will just put up charge back. And that is not the way that you advance, right? So we navigate by the feedback that we're getting. And sometimes we learn the hard way, and that sucks, but that's just life. Okay, 144 unweighted. Okay, so I want you guys to take a moment to just close your eyes and check in with how you're feeling in this moment. Just do a kind of somatic assessment of your being, how your breath is, how you're feeling, what kind of emotions you got going on. Just kind of notice that. And then start to breathe in through your nose and really fill your sinuses in your face. And remember that as we breathe in light, right? We're breathing in oxygen. When you breathe in oxygen, which has free electrons, I always say electrons, and I'm like, I kind of go with those people who say there is no such thing as electron, but I just use it for context. Your blood goes from being dark red to bright red, right? Because there's light in the air that we're breathing. We're in a plasma environment. Breathe that light in. So really fill the whole sinus cavities with light as you breathe in with curiosity and appreciation through your nose, just for a few more breaths. See if you can feel light behind your eyes. See if you can feel light start to fill up in your brain. And then you might notice that as you breathe in to your sinuses, it fills your belly. Fills your belly. So now bring your awareness down into your belly. And see if you can really fill the whole pelvic floor. Notice any discomfort you might encounter on the way down there. I feel a lot of emotion coming up, just bringing the breath down into the pelvic floor. Keep doing it though. Don't disassociate. Don't bounce out of it. Stay with it. All right. We got to feel it to heal it. You got to move your way through discomfort. We've been taught to resist and run away from discomfort, where really you need to go the opposite direction, in and through. Be willing to feel. That's part of being human. And it's part of what keeps us healthy and alive. We need our emotions, just like we need our sense of touch. If we didn't have it, we'd be lepers. That's what our emotions are, to keep us healthy. So feel them. Okay, and then take a nice big breath into the belly and exhale down your legs and out your feet into the ground. And do a couple like that, breathing into the belly like a boss, breathing out into the ground. That's it. Okay, so now I'm going to use the 144. We're going to listen to what's going on. Okay, so what I'm hearing in this is a lot of fear, and also like an ungroundedness. Like there's this feeling of like, whoa, starting to go like into my belly or into my pelvis, and whoop, I'm coming right back out. And so that can be self-judgment, especially any ladies here. If you're judging your belly, your butt, your legs, your thighs. Anybody guilty of that? Looking at your thighs. Yeah, I remember working on a woman one day, and I'm working on the half step in the thighs, and I said to her, do you hate your thighs? And she said, I hate my thighs. I was like, I can feel that. I can feel that in your thighs, that you're freaking hating them. Don't do that. That's not how you improve anything. You only improve things with love. You wouldn't want somebody following you around, looking at your thighs all the time, going, I hate your thighs, man. I really hate your thighs. You'd be like, God, go away. That's so not okay. But we do it to ourselves. And maybe guys even do. You got a beer belly, not digging it. Don't hate it. All right. So these next few strikes with this fork, I want you to really breathe into the belly and I want you to really exhale down on the ground. And I want you to try to do it with love, without judgment of your own body and whatever pain is stored in there. It's not your fault that that pain is there. It is your responsibility to feel it and heal it. I was judging my body as I breathed into the belly. See, I caught that. You can't hide these judgy thoughts from me. The fork reveals them. That's better. That's a little scary, but you're doing it. Yeah, that's better. I know this is a big thing to ask of you, but I want you to commit to only loving, having compassion for, and accepting your body. That's a really tall order, isn't it? But you know what? I have a gorgeous body, and the way that I have a gorgeous body, I didn't used to, because I used to hate it. And now I love it. And I loved it into gorgeousness. I didn't berate it and shame it and judge it and hate it and blah, 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 blah. That's not how beauty grows. Only by love. That's it, guys. That's it. Anything else you're doing it wrong. And you want to do it right because you are God. Your body is God. Any jickety bickety that you direct at you, you're directing at the earth, you're directing at the water, you're directing at the plasma, you're directing at God. This is a big mind virus that we've been taught to self-loathe. It's one of the biggest poisons that stops us from having heaven on earth, is this subconscious self-loathing that we've been programmed with. Yeah. You're not God, Gloria. You're a drop of God. God is in you. Just like a drop of water isn't all the water. Yes, but it is water and it's connected to all that is. Creation, the fabric of creation. God is the fabric of creation. God is the creator, the creator. You are part of the fabric that is God. A sub-creator. All right, here we go. All right, just be curious about where these next few strikes want to go. All kinds of stuff coming up. Like, I don't even want to bother putting labels on it. There's just many different of the feelings and patterns that get in the way of this. This is a big one, you guys, and it's an important one, and there was a lot in the way. Well, let's just keep being with it. And notice if your body wants to move or stretch or yawn or cry or whatever wants to happen. Just be curious about it. Don't think about it. You don't think about music when you're listening to music. You're not analyzing how the music is affecting you. You're just letting yourself have the experience of it, right? Just be curious about what you notice. No right or wrong. Love so much emotion. So much like blah, 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 blah. At some point, it'll start to change and it'll get more open and brighter. But there's a lot of programs, a lot of fear. This judgment's rooted very deeply. It's very self righteous, right? There's a lot of self righteousness. That's a trap, an easy one to fall into, right? And self righteousness, think about how rigid it is. I'm really hitting that rigidity. So see if you can find any rigidity in your body. Maybe breathe into it. You're probably not going to want to go there. Your breath is probably going to be like, oh, no, I'm not going there. And we get really attached to our self-righteousness. Make somebody wrong so I can be right because that makes me feel powerful. It's getting better. One of the rigid ones right now. Yeah, I really feel it. But can you imagine? Like, think about what might be on the other side of that rigidity. It's like softness. It's a lot easier to be soft than it is to be rigid. It's a lot better for your health. Feels like I have a lump in my gut, density in my belly. Density is often emotional stuff that you haven't let yourself feel. We're getting into some pretty uncomfortable stuff here. Thank you for being here and being willing to feel the uncomfortable stuff with me. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good to me. But I know it will pass, so I'm willing to stick with it. Always passes if you stay with it. Yeah. A wiggle wanting to come up. But when we're looking at what wants to depattern, we're also looking at what wants to arise in its place, right? And I can tell you what wants to arise in its place is this flowering from the solar plexus, this opening, this lifting, this brightening. That's what wants to arise. And maybe a burp or two. Excuse me, my goodness. But that really loosened something in my right hip because I was feeling a lot of discomfort just inside my right pelvic bone. And I'm getting hot, so there's some heat releasing, some emotion. Right? It's just so clampy down, and it creates friction and heat and stored heat, and then that makes us flare. Right? Some idiot pulls out in front of me in traffic, and you're like, ah! That's that tension just needing to be released. So we'd much rather just kind of soften and dissolve it, digest it, and transform it, alchemize it, and then explode in our car or wherever we do, if we do. Good. So this is starting to lighten and brighten. I'm just going to do a few strikes and not say anything and just see what you notice. Stay in your body. Okay. Take a breath Pelvis all the way down the legs, the feet. Feel your feet. Take a few if you have to. Wiggle your toes. Get it, stay in your body. Watch your breath, what it wants to do. Yeah, there we go. Do you feel that there's like an opening starting to happen and that is starting to open now, starting to soften? Yeah. Ah. Feel that space opening up. A little more nausea coming up, right? As you start to release these places that have been clamped, the waste, the cell waste, the toxins, the stuff that hasn't been able to circulate, get out of cells and things like that starts to move. Whenever we've been held in a locked place, you can guarantee it's like the garbage trucks aren't getting to that neighborhood. And so as it starts to open, whatever emotion is there, whatever toxins are there, like it starts to come out. And this is part of the reason why people don't like doing healing work, is because you can spill out this ick that you've been trying to hold back and in. And then it's like, bleh. But then when you get to the other side, into that spaciousness, into that relief, into that greater state of health, it's so worth the discomfort. So don't be afraid to feel bad in this kind of process. All right, my dog is here chewing. Yeah, self-judgment seems silly. That's a very beautiful point to come to awareness of. All right, I'm going to move to the 528. We're just going to see where this wants to go. So bring your awareness into your solar plexus now that we've kind of released some of the tension around there, and let this tone really come into the solar plexus, and think about a peony opening. Think about just an opening of light and this sort of compassionate yesness, right? God is always giving to us, and just letting that arise in you. And that being compassionate doesn't mean decaying your own boundaries and allowing yourself to stay in an unhealthy situation, right? Don't compare, don't put those in the same category, because they're not. And as the solar plexus starts to open, it comes up and it illuminates the heart center. The heart center, right? You've got to have this solar plexus element. Just trying to go into the heart without opening the plexus is unsupported. So it's really important that this radiance arises from here and then it comes up, forms. Breath into the belly, ground down through the pelvis. Really take a moment to be with those hip joints. They're feeling a little funky for some of you. Be in the hip joints, because we've got to support with the pelvic floor, with the lower belly too. We want to be really present in that. Again, all the way down the legs to the feet. Yeah, breathing into the lower belly, feeling that support the center and the heart. Right, and as that light starts to spread out and expand, come up to the head and the face and the neck. Start to bathe that whole body in more light. So do just a few more strikes of this. Let it go where it will. I'm really feeling it on the sides of my neck here at the moment, but you might be noticing it in a different place. And I know when I get all wiggly that we're really depatterning something, giving the opportunity to reset into something more neutral, healthier, more free. Does any sound want to come out? Are you free enough to make any sound that wants to come out? And your pets might think that you're weird. That's okay. And your family members. Right? Nice relaxation. starting to happen, softening, like a letdown, right? A bit of good letdown, like a softening letdown. All right, I'm going to make this the last one. Just really feel that light. Feel the light of all of us, the whole crew that we got here. Everyone will ever watch this. Kind of like sending a spotlight of light and coherent energy, compassion, connection to source, God, into the world around us, into every cell in our own being. I have compassion for every cell in my whole being, right? Mostly water, 99.9% of your molecules are water. Like, how hard is it to be compassionate to water, guys? Okay, taking a nice big breath, really a full body kind of illuminating breath. And just keeping your eyes closed for a moment, just sort of check in and do a baseline assessment now. How do you feel? Are you noticing what's different? Part of me feels like I need to do a couple more 174s. And I don't want to keep you guys more than such a long time again. But I'm feeling like I need to get just a little bit more in here with the 174. So keep on sussing out how you feel. Drop it in the chat, but I'm going to do just a couple more. Yeah, wherever you still got tension. Because I was feeling it. I was feeling some kind of surface places that still were like, me, wait, don't go away. All right, that's the last one. Get it while you can, wherever it wants to go. Good. Yeah, that feels better. These last few strikes. And it did the trick. There's just a whole softening that I can really feel. Just a softening and opening. Less attachment to those judgments. Less attachment to that rigidity. Less attachment to that self-righteousness, right? This is part of being free. Not being attached to those non-beneficial patterns that maybe are there because of ancestry or culture. Not necessarily you. Good. I felt the desire to vomit out my self-judgment. I love that, right? Yeah, so this is the most important thing, and I'm going to give you guys homework, okay? Your homework for the week is to really notice every time that you're engaging in self-judgment. And can you see where the rigidity of that is? And can you soften down into compassion, into love? And you don't even have to really worry about other people, because the more you get in the habit of doing this with yourself, the easier it is for others, right? Well, you also want to use discernment, right? If you're looking at your body and you're going, oh, my thighs could use some toning, then go do some squats. If you want to experience yourself as more, or use your sonic slider on yourself with love and kindness, adoration even. Yeah. Really, take good care of yourself like you would take care of a child or a pet or a horse. All right. So just to recap, we talked about judgment. We talked about softening that judgment into compassion, um, responding constructively, but not abandoning discernment and not abandoning the importance of our own boundaries to keep us healthy. So we can have strong boundaries, we can have discernment, we can step through judgment into compassion. And that's a much healthier place to be. And that's, I think, where we want to go. It's such a pivot from a life of self-judging and pleasing others first. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks you guys for showing up, for being willing to do this work. I appreciate that. And I don't have a topic for next week yet. So always happy to get your suggestions. Just a quick housekeeping stuff. I do have my Shift Network course on the ancestral healing. We're going to do some really deep dive into the noise, nonsense, miasmic programming that we've all inherited, because we're here to be free. And we are here to create a new experience of human to the very best of our ability. Right? And you're here to do this as well. And the more of us we get on the boat, the better we row together, the more impactful we're going to be. So that starts on February 28th, and there's a link in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You can also drop a like, and that helps. And take really good care of yourself, okay? Love yourself. All right, everybody, take care. See you next week.